So we're still talking about orthographic sketching, and so what I want to do here is show you some examples of some quick ways to just get into sketching using, in this case, some kind of organic forms. We could take the same approach with geometric forms, and we'll do that a little bit later in a different video maybe. But I've laid out two ellipses, a circle, and in fact a rectangle if I get to that on this page. But it's just a way that you can start to lay things out and work around the page. So I'm going to be looking at different design ideas, but basically you can look at how I'm breaking up the forms and adding some details, but very, very few details, because right now this is more just a form study for the client or for a review by whomever. It could be my design director or it could be the design team. And I just want to show them a bunch of different concepts. So I'm mainly just looking for proportional breakups of the product and thinking about how surfaces could interact, like where the hatch line work that I just put in just now, that's kind of an indication of a shadow, and so that surface is actually getting tucked in underneath that oval form. But the whole idea is to give yourself indications of what the form is doing, what the surfaces are doing, and that's going to be done with Hatchwork or marker work. And in this particular video, I'm doing both. I'm kind of throwing it all into one video to show you different ways that you can lay these out and convey form, convey your ideas in a particular way to your client. So you need to understand kind of what I'm doing as far as, putting all these tools into one video. A lot of times the marker work will be done much later. I could have a dozen of these pages with different concepts and ultimately go through the pages and pick out, let's say, a half a dozen of the concepts that I think have potential, and I might go back and rework them a little bit even before I show them to a client. But right now, in all of the sketch work that I'm doing, I'm not using any guides. I'm not using straight edges or even circle guides. You can look at my circles, they're not perfect, but the key is to not overwork your sketch. You want your line work to be light enough to where when you work it and work on top of it and add additional detail to it, that you build it up very slowly. If you're very heavy-handed or you have a broad tip marker, it's not going to work. It's going to look very cartoonish, or as I say to a lot of people, it looks like you drew an icon of something and not a design. So we're looking for forms that have design potential. And so I'm going to be looking at a lot of different things, whether it's, using an oval form or using, in this case right now, I've drawn a circle, I've quartered it, and I'm looking for ways that maybe this earbud could be based on that circular form. And it's really just a mechanism for exploration. I don't automatically know that it's going to have potential, and I'll go ahead and spoiler alert on this one, but this particular design I'm working on right now based on the circle just really never worked out well, right? So but I'm going ahead and I'm going to show it in this sketch so that that not everything turns out perfectly well. I'm pretty pleased with the oval kind of river stone feeling organic forms on the left and right, and going forward those might be ones that I would explore a little bit further. But for now, it's all about line work. You can see it's very light, so the line quality is good. And I distinguish again between line quality and line weight. The final line weight will come later on, towards the very end of your composition and because you need to figure out what's going to jump off the page and what doesn't, right? Where do you want to draw people's attention to? It may be only one sketch on this page, not both. And so we use a lot of different methods, a lot of different tricks to draw one's attention, right? So it can be just line weight. It could be line weight and hatchwork. This sketch right now, the shadows are indicated by hatchwork. But I'm going to go ahead and add another mechanism that you can use called a vignette. And those are used to kind of highlight certain designs or certain sketches on the page to have them jump off and be, it draws more emphasis to these particular sketches. And right now, you can see that the vignette I'm drawing is actually going behind the center sketch and through that hole. And so it's a great indication very quickly to say, that's a through hole. If that wasn't there, that could be just a depression with a bevel around it in the plastic. But in this case, I'm showing it as an actual through hole. So now I'm thinking about very quickly, okay, where do I want to indicate shadow? That may be done with marker. I'm going to add some marker here shortly. That will help communicate the form. So right now I'm using a kind of a broader, more spaced out hatchwork to indicate a lighter shadow, as opposed to the more dense lines, which would be a more contrast with the shadow. And it all depends on what's going to communicate the form the best. But I'm kind of giving myself, this is a way to give myself mental notations of what I might want to do with the marker. I may also discover, that's just the hatchwork is an indication for me to remember what my thought process was as I go on to other pages, right? So as I mentioned, I would not necessarily go directly to marker work on this sketch. I may take these and leave it almost at this stage right now, but I'm going to go ahead and put some marker on there and kind of complete the sketch and take you through the process, right? This is also, this is also an introduction to markers, right? So we're drawing strictly in 2 dimensions here, right? And orthographically. So you're not burdened by perspective correctness or anything at all, but just you can watch how quickly you can apply a little bit of marker. So this is a number 3 cool gray marker. Now, depending on what brand you have, you could use a 30%. You might even use a 20%. I'm going a little bit darker because it tends to show up better in a video while I'm filming it. But I'm giving myself kind of an indication of the shadow, where certain surfaces would curl underneath with a radius, and what might be a flat surface. So it's whatever you think will help communicate your design, and most importantly, and I'll stress this again all semester, how you can do it in an efficient manner, meaning how quickly can you do it, because time is everything when you are on the clock working with a client. And so it's trying to figure out the best indication, the most thorough indication that you can use to communicate and get your client excited about your design, but at the same time, a process that works for you to communicate all of your design ideas in the most efficient way. I sadly have a tendency to go a little bit overboard and spend a little bit more time, but that's because that's what I think is what the client deserves, and it's also the more I can communicate effectively, the quicker decisions will be made, and that's also very important because we can't bog down the development process with our clients. They have strict budgets and strict timelines. So now in the video, I'm applying a vignette, and the way that I'm doing that is I'm picking one color. One mistake I see a lot by students is, they may have 3 different vignettes on one page and they're all different colors, and they'll put different colors on all the different views of the concepts. And in reality, you want to present your concepts all close to the same level of fidelity. And the reason for that is you don't want to bias the design process. You want each one to be evaluated kind of on the same level playing field, if that makes sense. So I'm using one color and I'm distributing that through vignettes, and they're relatively I have flat overlapping strokes that went into applying the marker in the vignettes, and that way the ink bleeds together nicely and you get kind of a uniform feel to the drawing. If it's really streaky, which happens quite a bit, then that streakiness in the vignette can be kind of distracting. If it's a flat field of color, then that works the best. And then I would also reiterate, to use a very light color, right? You're just trying to draw a little bit of emphasis. You don't want to use something too outrageous or too kind of offensive to some people, meaning a bright purple might be a little bit offsetting at this point in the process. So I tend to be a little bit more timid and use nice light shades of a color, and I also try to be very consistent with that application. So at this juncture, I'm nearing the end, and again, like I said, this is not the process I would be going through right at the beginning on one sketch. I would be coming back in later on and applying a bolder marker, so a heavier line weight. And again, these are different layers of emphasis that you can use. So you have the vignettes that help punch the sketches off the page, and likewise the dark, bolder line weight does effectively the same thing, just in a slightly different way. So at this juncture, I've kind of decided that the areas of shadow, I wanted to create a little bit more contrast, so I've gone back in, I believe, with just the same number 3 marker, but in the meantime, the ink is dried, and so my second application is much darker looking. So pretty close to wrapping things up. The thing that I would add, and this can be both for yourself in the thumbnail stage as well as for a client in a later stage of sketch, but add notes, right? You may not always remember what you were thinking 3 days from now, looking back on when you generated this sketch, right? So you might want to give an indication of material, color, texture, any kind of form ideas. It could be button locations. It could be, hey, I need a volume control, or I need a power off button. If not that, maybe I need a single LED to indicate the power or the charge on the device. So in this case, I'm putting in my last set of notes, and that's pretty close to wrapping up that sketch. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll be glad to follow up. And otherwise, try 2D sketching. Bring form and shape to those flat 2D drawings.